So this is a situation where there's a lot going on that we do not have any control over. And I think that's one of the most stressful and frustrating things about this situation, is that there's so much that's out of our control. And it's easy to get stuck thinking about all those things, but when we do, we make it harder for ourselves to handle stress. By focusing on what you can control, you're going to help yourself in a couple different ways. First, it can help you feel better in the moment. Second, by doing some of the things that we're going to talk about in this video, you can actually kind of train or condition your body and your mind to better handle stress in the future. So by doing some of these things, not only are you going to help yourself feel better in the moment, you're also going to help your future self to handle stress better. So let's talk about some things you can control, starting with the way that you take care of yourself. Your physical health and your mental health are connected. Things like getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, drinking enough water, getting exercise or movement. So let's talk about exercise, for example. When we move our bodies or when we exercise, even if it's something as simple as taking a walk, our brains release chemicals that make us feel happier and calmer. So if you're frustrated or upset or sad, getting a little bit of movement, a little bit of exercise can just help boost your mood and lower your stress levels in that moment. Exercising consistently is also going to make it easier for you to handle stress and stressful situations in the future. We all have little things that we deal with every single day that are annoying, frustrating, or stressful. Just tiny little things. But those small little things, if we're not careful, can really build up over time. By exercising consistently, you're going to give your mind and your body that opportunity to release or let go of some of that stress or tension or frustration that naturally builds up. So then when something really, really stressful happens, like you get into an argument with a family member or a friend, the stress from that argument is going to be added on top of less stress overall. And so it's going to be easier for you to handle it and to calm yourself down. But let's say that you're not exercising regularly and you're not giving your body and your mind any opportunity to kind of get rid of that stress or frustration that naturally builds up. Then when something really stressful happens, like you get into an argument, the stress of that argument is going to be built on top of a lot of stress already. And it's going to make it even more difficult for you to handle that situation and to calm yourself down. By focusing on your physical health, especially exercise, that's that conditioning that I was talking about. You're going to be training your body and your mind to more easily calm yourself down and feel less stressed overall. Another thing that you can control is how much time you spend on social media and what you're looking at on social media. I encourage everyone to kind of check in with yourself after spending time online and just ask yourself how you're feeling. If you notice that you feel really anxious, scared, sad, frustrated, or bad about yourself after looking at certain things or certain people's profiles online, that might be a sign that you need to spend a little bit less time looking at those things. For example, I found that I started spending a lot of time looking at things about the coronavirus. And I started to notice that after spending time on social media, I felt really nervous and scared and sad. And it started to affect me physically. I started having trouble sleeping. I started getting headaches. My appetite was kind of messed up. It helps me to stay informed, so it helps me to look at a few things each day. But if I look at too much stuff, then it stops being helpful and it starts being really hurtful. So I decided to limit the amount of time that I was allowed to look at coronavirus stuff online. I still get to stay informed, which actually helps me feel better, but I'm not spending so much time that it stops being helpful and starts being hurtful. I'm also trying to balance out the time that I spend looking at things like that make me feel a little bit more nervous or sad or scared with things that make me feel positive and happy, make me laugh, inspire me. For as much time as I spend looking at coronavirus stuff on social media, I try to spend just as much time, if not double that amount of time, looking at things that make me happy, make me feel positive, make me laugh, to kind of try to balance out the negatives of social media with some positives. You also have some control over your thoughts. The way that we think about things has a really big effect on the way that we feel and the way that we act. An important way to help yourself is to try to reframe negative thoughts that you might be having. Reframing is simply looking at things from a different perspective. It's changing your point of view. It's kind of like changing the filter on Snapchat or Instagram. Sometimes changing the filter changes the entire picture. If you can change the filter on your thoughts, you're going to change the way that you feel, and you might change the way you act. And it could just kind of create this positive chain reaction. To reframe your thoughts, all you have to do is catch yourself when you're having a negative thought. Usually when we have negative thoughts, we don't stop to think about it. We just think it and then we accept it. And then we let it affect the way that we feel and the way that we act. Instead of just accepting a thought when you have it, catch it and examine it and ask yourself, is there another way to look at it? Because most of the time, there is another way to look at it. It's also really helpful to ask yourself, what would I say to a friend? Or would I say this to a friend? I think a lot of times we're a lot more negative and harsh towards ourselves than we would ever be to a friend or someone that we care about. Ask yourself, would I ever say this to a friend? And if you would never say something like that to a friend, that's a good indication that there might be a different way for you to look at it. Now, reframing your thoughts might seem a little bit difficult at first. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. And it might seem like you're kind of trying to force it at first. But your mind is a muscle. And just like any other muscle in your body, the more you use it in certain ways, the stronger you're going to get. And I promise you, I'm speaking from personal experience, if you stick with it and you continue to do it and to practice it, it will help you so much in your life. I started using reframing when I was about a sophomore in high school, 15 years old, when a school counselor suggested it. Now, at first, I'm not going to lie, I did not like it. I oftentimes had to be reminded to reframe. I had to write it down in a notebook, and it just felt like homework to me. But I stuck with it, and the more I did it, the easier it got, until eventually it did not feel like work at all. Pretty quickly after I started practicing it, it got to the point where I didn't have to write it down to be able to reframe. And then over time, it got to the point where I can reframe a thought without even trying. I've practiced reframing so much that anytime I have a negative thought, my brain just naturally and automatically goes, okay, there's this, but here's another way that you could think about it if you want to. When you can naturally reframe a negative thought without having to think about it, it really does change the entire way that you view yourself and the world. And it can help you feel a lot more positive about things overall if you're able to change that filter on your thoughts to make it just a little bit brighter, a little bit more positive. You also have some control over the way that you feel and the way that you handle your feelings. So the first step is to acknowledge your feelings. I think that we are often taught that there are feelings that are okay to feel, and there are feelings that are not okay to feel. Feelings are just feelings, and they're not good or bad. They're there for a reason, though, and it's important that we acknowledge them. We cannot decide or have any control over how we handle our feelings until we actually acknowledge that the feeling is there. 2 is to communicate. Sometimes all we need to do is get our feelings out in some way, whether that's talking to someone or writing it down, because we all know what happens when we bottle things up inside. It's usually not pretty. It's also going to be really important as you're spending more and more time with your family and the people you live with to communicate your feelings to them. People cannot read each other's minds, and so if you're feeling a certain way, you can't just assume that another person knows how you feel. Say, for example, one of your family members is doing something that is really frustrating you. It's going to be most helpful for you to communicate that frustration before it grows and grows and grows until you're actually angry or you get into a fight about it. Next, use all the coping skills you have. I like to say that everyone should have their own coping skills toolbox or list of things that they know works for them to help them feel better when they are feeling sad, anxious, angry, stressed out. So everything that you know helps you feel better, use those things. I know I have personally had to use every coping skill in my coping skills toolbox during social distancing to help myself feel better. You also might need to learn new coping skills. This is a new and uniquely stressful situation, so you might find that all the things you usually do to help yourself feel better just aren't enough right now. Learn new coping skills, look things up on the internet, communicate with your family and your friends. Maybe if you communicate a feeling to a friend, they can say, oh yeah, I've been feeling very similarly, but here's what I do to help myself feel better. And it might be something that you've never thought about before. So just by communicating your feelings, you might learn new coping skills that can help you through this time and can help you through stressful situations in the future. One way to really help yourself with your feelings is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness just means being in the present moment, not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future, just being in the moment. By practicing mindfulness in moments when you're not stressed out or you're not angry, you're going to be making it easier for yourself to be aware of your feelings and more in control of your feelings in moments of high stress. It doesn't have to take a lot of effort or a lot of time. You can literally do anything in a mindful way. You could brush your teeth mindfully. Instead of worrying about what you have to do that day or thinking about something that you said to a friend that you're like, oh, that was so stupid, focus on the sound of the water, the smell and the taste of the toothpaste, the feel of the toothbrush bristles on your tongue and your gums and your teeth, the sound that the bristles make as you scrub your teeth. Even if you just practice mindfulness while you're brushing your teeth, that's going to help you to train your brain to be in the present moment and be aware of your feelings so you have more power in how you handle them when you're really stressed out. Having goals is a great way to give us a sense of direction, make us feel a little bit more in control, and it's another way that you can shift your focus off of things that you do not have control over and onto things that you do. If you're focused on your goals, then you're going to be less focused on all the things that are going on that you can't control. Plus, when we have goals and we meet those goals, it feels really good. It's like a boost to our self-confidence and our mood. I think it's good to have daily and weekly goals, or smaller, more short-term goals, and bigger, more long-term goals. Those daily or weekly goals can just help feel more in control and less stressed out day by day. And those daily, weekly goals can also just help keep you on track and keep you motivated. Long-term goals are really important right now as well. We all need something to work towards and look forward to in the future. We all need some hope. By continuing to focus on some of your long-term goals, you can kind of have something to look forward to and to work towards and to feel hopeful about. And I think that's really, really important right now. We don't get from one place to the other in one giant leap. Oftentimes it's little tiny baby steps that get us from where we are to where we want to be. So you have to think about and map out how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be. If you have a plan, when you hit a roadblock or an obstacle, it's going to make it easier for you to overcome that obstacle and still reach your goal. Your goals might seem a lot more overwhelming or unattainable if you don't plan out how you're going to get there. So plan out those steps. Whatever goals you're creating and the plans you create to meet them, make sure that they are realistic. You want to set yourself up for success, because as good as it feels to meet your goal, it feels pretty bad to fail and to not meet a goal. Whatever goals you're setting, make sure they're things you can actually do and goals you can actually meet. For example, if your goal is to improve your grade in reading language arts, let's say you're getting a D. and you only have 3 weeks left in the school year. It probably is not a realistic goal to say you're going to raise your grade from a D to an A in 3 weeks. Maybe a more realistic goal for that time frame is, I'm going to raise my grade from a D to a C or higher. If you have more time, say you have 3 months to raise your grade, saying you're going to raise your grade from a D to an A might be more realistic in that situation. You also have to be really realistic about your plan. So let's say you've made the goal of raising your grade from a D to an A, and you have 3 months to do that. How are you going to do that? Are you going to spend more time studying? How much more time? Are you going to ask your teacher for help? Are you going to ask for extra credit? What exactly are you going to do to make sure that you raise your grade to where you want it to be? Now, let's say that you decide that part of your plan to raise your grade is that you're going to study more. And you usually spend an hour or two here or there throughout the week. It might not be realistic for you to say you're going to go from studying an hour or two each week to studying for 3 hours every single day. A more realistic plan might be, okay, I usually only study for an hour to maybe 3 throughout a 5-day week. Instead, I'm going to try to study every day for 30 to 45 minutes. It's going to seem a lot more realistic for you to sit down and study for 30 or 45 minutes than to sit down and study for 3 hours at a time. And finally, focus on what you can do right now. Think of your long-term goals and think of what can you be doing right now, little tiny things each day or each week to keep moving you along that path. Little baby steps you can be taking right now to meet a future goal that you have. And that's going to also increase feelings of hope for the future.